Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. This is a special video edition, and we are here at Road Atlanta in Georgia this weekend. And I'm Bice, obviously, and I'm joined by the ever-popular Mr. Paul Carruthers from Southern California over on the other side there. And the man we have in the middle here is somebody pretty special for a couple of reasons. One of them is, I can't believe we've done near 200 of these things, and we haven't had this guy on, Travis Wyman. I mean, it's about time we do it. So
we had his brother on like 199 times.
I know, and Travis has such an amazing story to tell that we're going to talk about today, and we'll get into it. Travis is a factory Harley-Davidson rider, one of the few factory riders in our paddock, by the way. In fact, one of the very few. And he's also racing in another class, which we'll talk about later, but he's going to be a busy man here at Road Atlanta. He's racing in 3 different classes, 4 races this weekend. And Travis also does a little bit of car racing. We're going to talk about that as well. And car instruction, driving instruction as well. Do you race cars as well?
I have a few times.
He has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our crew could use a little of your help.
What, in the rental cars?
Yeah, just getting here is like you never know what's going to happen, so maybe we'll all go there together.
But Travis is the middle in the sandwich of the 3 Wyman brothers. I mean, Kyle's the oldest. Travis is the delicious filling, and Cody's the other side of the sandwich, I guess. So anyway, Travis, we're glad you're here. This is a cool thing for you to be involved in. A lot of things in our paddock. I mean, you've raced Super Sport. You've done a lot over the years with us, and you've been doing Stock 1000 for a while and some Superbike, and then you got involved in King of the Baggers. Let's talk about King of the Baggers to start with, and Harley-Davidson, and the fact that you are a factory rider for those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story how it all came about. I did the inaugural race at Laguna when, you guys tried to have the Bagger series kind of kick off, and I raced for Trask Performance out of Arizona and did pretty well, finished 4th. And when that race was over, you guys announced you were going to be doing another season, and it really wasn't where I wanted to kind of switch my focus. I had done really well in the BMWs, and I was hoping to continue that effort in the next year. And then Kyle kind of reached out to me and said, hey, the factory Harley wants to put me on a bike. And I'm like, good luck, man. And I was like, jokingly said to him, I said, if you ever need a teammate, let me know. And then, he kicked off the first round here. And then it was probably a week or so after he called me, and I was at work and I was busy, and he texted me right after, and he was like, hey, you're going to want to pick up the phone. And so I picked up the phone. He's like, hey, they want a teammate, and I picked you as a teammate. And I'm like, dang, all right, here we go. So finished out the last 2 rounds of last year, and then Harley decided to keep me on for this year. So it's pretty exciting. It's
fantastic. I remember that first King of the Baggers race that you did. Was that bike was supercharged, wasn't it?
It had a turbo.
It was a turbo.
Yeah.
We could hear it whistling around the track, and you had an interesting seating position on that bike too. It was almost like a drag bike a little bit, it seemed like.
Yeah, we didn't get a whole lot of testing time. We got 1 day of testing, and then the truck was leaving the next day for Laguna, so there really wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for me to change like the ergonomics. It was just kind of, all right, this is what we got. But I was definitely stretched out. My feet were behind my seat. It wasn't the most comfortable thing by any means, but I had a lot of fun with it. Those guys are great.
Yeah, and the bike you're riding now, is a proper race bike. You guys have done so much to it, and it's evolving all the time. Talking to Kyle and you a little bit about like what they're doing with that bike, even there's certain things about it that are even different from Daytona to now, right? Can you talk about some of the things you got this weekend with that bike?
So we actually tested here a few weeks ago. We ran into some issues at Daytona in the races, and we really wanted to get them sorted. We were having trouble keeping the bike in gear. We were finding false neutrals and things like that. So they went back to the factory and worked, 18-hour days just to try and get that sorted for us. So when we came here and tested, that's the biggest improvement we made was in the transmission. So I'm pretty confident we can go out and have a good showing here at this round. But to talk about like ergos between like the Trask bike and then my Harley now, it's like last year when I came in, really my job was to help test and develop Kyle's bike to help him win the championship, and we were able to do that. And now this year, as a teammate to Kyle, racing against him, I've had the opportunity to change a lot of the settings and the way the bike sits and feels for me. And I made it feel so much like my last year's BMW that now I honestly feel more comfortable on the Harley than I did last year's BMW.
Wow.
The way that it's set up.
You know, and before I kick it over to Paul, I want to mention too, they raced the King of the Baggers race for the first time at Daytona this year. And Travis was second in the first race and obviously on the podium. And then he was fifth in the second race, had a couple issues, but still managed to get 2 top 5s. So he had a real good weekend at Daytona. And you guys tested a little bit there, and you don't necessarily have more laps at Daytona than anybody else, right? In fact, maybe you even have less.
Probably less. I hadn't raced there in 8 years. So for me, Daytona is a track that I've always done well at and that I love. I think I actually set pole, like one of my only pole positions on the XR 1200s back then when we used to race those bikes. So to come back to Daytona after not racing so long, put it on pole and finish on the podium was a great start to the year.
Really good. Yeah.
What's the false neutral like on a 600-pound motorcycle?
It's terrifying.
I would imagine.
The engine braking is so crucial on these things that when you don't have it, you're almost 99% of the time going off the racetrack.
Well, I'm glad that got fixed.
Yeah. Yep.
So now with Kyle having the issues that he had at the first round in Daytona, do you tell him look, I'm the number 1 guy now, so you kind of just need to follow me around? Or is it too early for that?
No, there's still a lot of racing left. When we came here a few weeks ago, Kyle was a bit quicker than me. So I think he's got his focus set on trying to come back and win some races. But I think just he was probably pretty disappointed in what happened at Daytona. Not being able to score any points in race 2. I mean, it's a long season, but it's only 7 races, so every point will count. So we'll see how it goes. Did
the whole Daytona thing? It obviously there was some issues there, but the thing is with Harley-Davidson, they're so serious about fixing anything that does go wrong. You got to spend a couple of days at Road Atlanta. That's pretty valuable.
Oh, for sure. I've never actually done any testing here. All the time I've spent here has been racing. So to come here and actually work on some stuff in myself with the racetrack, I was super happy to have the opportunity to do that.
Now, everybody we've talked about that rides a bagger and a good bagger is always kind of in disbelief of how well they work as a motorcycle. And I think the public and our fans are the same way. They're like, there's no way that works that well, but they actually do.
It's pretty incredible, actually. When we tested here, it was during a track day. And we thought we might, hurt some egos and piss some people off that we were riding, and passing them on these baggers. But everyone was just so blown away at what they were capable of. They couldn't believe it. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
You got anything over there, bud?
Yeah, the bike itself, I love the fact that you guys raced this Screaming Eagle Road Glide last year. That's the model you have this year. But now there's a street bike I know it's not quite the race bike, but I could go out and buy a motorcycle that Kyle and Travis Wyman race. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yep.
And they developed that in this country, and it's on the showroom floor now. You got to feel a sense of pride about that you effected that big a company and them to have a product offering for the public out there.
Absolutely. And they've kept us involved, in every step of the way of developing that bike for the street. So a lot of the stuff that we've learned and incorporated on our race bikes from a performance side has now gone into the consumer motorcycles. And
right. It's basically joining the parts list at Screaming Eagle, right? That's the plan.
Yep. That's the plan. Yep. And there's more to come in the future too, for sure. I think this series alone has just kind of coincided perfectly with the growth of the performance bagger scene out there in the streets. So they kind of go hand in hand, but we need to start winning some races. That's for sure.
It's funny. We all have this happen. You buy a car, or you buy a motorcycle, and when you have that car or motorcycle, you're driving around or riding around, and you always see other people that have it. And now that I'm understanding and into King of the Baggers, I see baggers all the time, and I have such an appreciation for them out on the street. And they're just a cool looking motorcycle. Essentially, you got the big fairing in the front and the hard bags on the side. That's what makes a bagger a street bike bagger, right?
Yep.
And to make it in King of the Baggers, and people, we have some dissenters that comment on there, and they'll say, what are the bags on there for? Well, it's like, it wouldn't be King of the Baggers without the bags. So,
yeah.
Everybody's always wondering what's in the bags. Well, that's a secret, kind of. But you also are trying to be as light as possible. And the bags, yours are made of carbon fiber.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
They're mounted up pretty high.
Yep.
They have to have a working lid, which we saw at Daytona. Kyle's flipped open. I guess he was trying to get lunch early or something. And they had to zip tie it down. But did you worry about that on your bike after you saw that happen, or?
Well, I was leading the last couple laps, and then he came by me on the inside, and I'm way up high in the banking. I look down, and all I see is his bag flapping. And everybody jokes that, they're actually, the lids are held on by zip ties and some other mechanisms, but everybody jokes that he scraped the wall and actually broke one of the zip ties, and that's what did it.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't too worried about that happening. I was just trying to figure out how to beat him to the line.
Yeah. What was the toughest thing at Daytona with that track? And you've been on other bikes, so there's all kinds of crazy aspects, the banking and the the infield and all that. What's the toughest part of that track on a performance bagger?
Definitely coming off the tri-oval into turn one. The highest speed you see down to the lowest speed. And, if you miss a shift or the bike gets upset, you've already got the track transitioning there, so you can get out of shape pretty easily going in there and miss your marker, So there were a couple times there in the race, both Kyle and I went wide due to shifting issues or whatever, but that's probably the most challenging part. These bikes handle so well in the infield that it's like almost equivalent to the 600s to the infield, and then we get up on the banking, and that's where they make up a little time. But we were only a handful of seconds off of the super sport times there, so the bikes are incredible, and they're a lot of fun to ride.
Well, the other thing about a bagger too, and really cruisers that I have a tough time with, is I don't feel comfortable when my feet aren't below me. That's this feet forward deal. You obviously don't have that, and you had it on the Trask bike. It was even more that way. Your pegs are they still are they sort of standard bike style, or they're back further? Where are they at?
I'd say they're right about where sport bike pegs are at.
Okay.
So they're right kind of beneath your center of mass, so you can maneuver around the bike, and that's how we design them to be. If they're too far forward, you feel like you're kind of doing one of those back arches, and if they're too far behind you, you have no leverage to push off of. So right central's about where they're at.
So I could buy a Road Glide, and I could get it converted so the pegs aren't forward controlled. I could probably get that.
Like a standard controlled bagger. You'd have to modify the primary cover and make your own peg.
If you got enough money, you can make it happen.
Yeah, you can do anything.
Well, and we learned this from Kyle and Travis. You can tell us the left foot peg on that bike is welded to the primary cover.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, you get a little more vibration in the left than the right.
Yeah, and it doesn't bother you. It doesn't put your foot to sleep or anything when you're right.
Nope.
You think if you had more laps, it would happen eventually.
I think my hands would go numb before my feet.
Okay.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then Paul, I got one more on this. When they were at Daytona, I was kind of fascinated by this. The draft is always interesting on the banking, but you guys are pushing kind of a lot of wind with those big fairings, and you could feel each other, and it was kind of a weird feeling, right?
I could feel the air being pushed behind me from someone drafting. So I could feel that my forward momentum going before they pulled out to pass.
So you would totally know when somebody was near you then.
Yeah.
You could just feel it.
Yeah.
And would you get sucked together? Was it kind of a concern that you guys might touch?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't too crazy once you pulled out, but you could definitely feel a huge window open up when you're drafting somebody. It was like drafting a double-decker bus.
Sean already mentioned that you have two brothers, Kyle and Cody. Which one's your favorite?
Don't do that.
Yeah.
What? You love them both the same.
So funny. I've never asked you that. That's a good one. Though.
That was the one I said I was. Well, I didn't say what I was going to ask, but.
No.
Don't do that.
They're both wonderful humans, right?
I do. I have different sort of relationships with them.
Yes.
I live with Cody in Vegas, so we get to go play golf and, have a beer and hang out or whatever. And then I have the opportunity to be teammates with Kyle and work together on the racetrack. So we just have different sort of relationships, but it's all good. I think the three of us have gotten a lot closer in the last handful of years than we have in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of cool when it's gotten to the point where all three of you are here all the time. I mean, it's kind of cool. And we've even had races where there's been podiums with all of you.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's good having you three here.
And how about that? Through the magic of TV here we have Travis
Easy.
Wyman in a different outfit. Tytlers Cycle Racing RideHVMC Racing. It's actually Tytlers Cycle RideHVMC Racing BMW. So Travis is racing a BMW M1000RR in Stock 1000 and Superbike. He was at COTA a couple weeks ago, had 2 top 10 finishes, and so he's going to be racing 1 Stock 1000 race and 2 Superbike races, as well as the 1
Baggers.
King of the Baggers race. So he's racing 4 races in 3 classes this weekend. So, Travis, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
I do want to talk about something about the heritage of your family. I'm fascinated by it, not only because I grew up in the same state you did, but the fact that it all started with Harv's Harley-Davidson, and it was your grandfather's dealership.
Yep.
And your mom owns it now, Kim, who's a regular in our paddock that helps out Travis quite a bit, as well as the other Wyman's brothers. But I mean, it's an institution in the central New York area, I guess, Rochester area, wouldn't you say?
Yep. Yeah, my grandfather started it in 62. So in a few weeks, we're actually coming up on its 60th anniversary. The house we grew up in, the driveway was attached to the parking lot of the dealership. So I don't think we really had a choice or say in what we were going to do when we grew up, but that's where it all started. My grandfather raced, my mom and dad drag raced Harleys, and then we grew up riding dirt bikes in the field, and eventually my mom built a track, and then we had a motocross track, and we had all this land to really kind of just grow up riding 2-wheel motorcycles. And I think my mom and dad's goal for us was for us to end up hopefully on Harleys and flat track racing for the factory Harley team. And we did flat track for many years, 10 years or so, and then made the switch to road racing. And it's pretty cool that now, full circle back around, we're riding for the factory Harley team, but road racing. So
well, and that's a good point about flat track. You guys did start out there. Great training for road racing. Obviously, we know that. But why did you switch to road racing? Do you prefer it?
So at the time, this was like 2005, 2006. I mean, road racing was big. There was people were making money in it. It was known to be so much safer, and flat track was kind of on the decline, and a lot of people were getting hurt. So at the time in 2008, the opportunity came up for the Red Bull Rookies Cup here in the U.S. And first time ever riding a road race bike, I went and did that tryout. And there were like 600 applicants, 150 kids that came out to the tryout, and I ended up making that team of 23 riders. So I think that was a big selling point for my brothers to also get involved in it. So Kyle and Cody went club racing, and I was racing for Red Bull KTM at the time. And from there, I did a few flat track races in the years following, but in the last 14 years now, we've been doing this professionally. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And you've been racing a BMW for a few years now. You've been doing a lot with that brand. How did that come about? And your relationship obviously continues to grow with them. This year is the biggest team ever for what you're working on. It's been Travis Wyman Racing in the past, but now you've got 2 brands, title sponsors for the team. So
yeah. So this is my 5th season now with BMW. Really, how it all started. I mean, I spent a year not doing a full season. It would have been 5 years ago now.
That's math, isn't it?
wow, that's hard.
2017.
Hey, that's
2017. I spent a year. I just did a couple of super sport races on my own, and really just spent a lot of time at the paddock talking with teams. And I think I was reaching out to Steve Scheibe at the time. I think he had DeSalvo on the bike, and I was asking him if he needed anyone to help, test the bike or develop the bike or anything like that, just to try and get my foot in the door with a 1,000 team. Because I felt like I was ready to make the jump from 600s to 1,000s. And through that, I ended up meeting Steve Weir, who's, the head of BMW North America racing support. And he gave me the opportunity to come out and test the bike out in California in the off season. I went, and there's just kind of no looking back from there. So.
What's the pressure like when you have to do one of those tests? Like when you feel like, okay, I got to go test this bike, but it's going to either maybe lead to a job or not. Is that hard?
More nerve-wracking than sitting on pole at Daytona with 17 baggers behind
Yeah, I would think so.
You want to impress him, but you can't crash the bike.
Right, there's a fine line between.
You have to push, and you have to impress him, and you have to be fast. But it's definitely nerve-wracking. But it's one of those things that's changed my life completely in my, direction. I thought by the time I was 30 years old, I'd be retired from motorcycle racing, and I turned 30, and now I got, almost 40 races this year lined up in 2 different teams, 2 different semis. It's going to be a great year, I feel like.
Is there going to come a point when you'll accidentally have the wrong leathers on? Or
Probably.
Yeah. I think.
That was part of my selling point with Alpine Stars this year. So I have full support on both programs. But to get them to help me with both was, I basically said there might be a time, which there was last year, where I was on the Harley suit racing the BMW. I said, I'm happy to have them on board, so it makes the transition a little easier. So if for some reason I don't have time to change, at least I'm in the right brand.
Same brand, yeah.
Clothing.
Talk a little bit about that new team. I mean, it's obviously big. Is it kind of difficult that they went that big right away, or is it actually helpful that there's so many guys with input?
It's helpful. We had the first round at COTA, which was kind of a simplified version of what we have going on this weekend, where it was only Superbike. So I think it was good opportunity for, my guys and my team to merge with Corey Alexander's team, and for everybody to start working together. And I think it'll be a matter of time before everything flows perfectly the way it's supposed to. But I think that's, with anything, more repetition, more practice, you learn. But we have plenty of guys down there to help, which is something new for me, where I don't have to do a lot of the hard labor. So for me, it's a great thing, and I'm super grateful to be a part of it.
So you just fly in and take care of your own business.
Yeah, that was the funny part about this year is I was like, man, I don't have to drive my own rig to each race, and I could just get to fly. And now I'm driving my truck and trailer with my girlfriend and my dog to every race anyways. But it's definitely a different approach to the weekends. I'm not as, burnt out and exhausted.
Right.
So, yeah.
Let's talk about the way the team is structured a little bit. So there are actually 2 transporters, just so everybody knows. The one team is Tytlers Cycle Racing, and it's got Hector Barbara and PJ Jacobson, and they're only in Superbike. The other part of it is Tytlers Cycle, RideHVMC Racing, and it's Corey Alexander and Travis Wyman, and they're racing Stock 1000, and they're also racing in Superbike, which is different than Superbike Cup, which you did last year, which you're actually on you're on a Stock 1000 bike, but you're truly entered in Superbike completely. Mm-hmm. Is that going to feel different for you between Superbike Cup and actually true Superbike? It's kind of the same, isn't it?
The Cup for me last year was the same. I was racing my stock bike and the Superbike. And, at the end of the year, my goal was to win the Superbike Cup Championship, which I came up just short and finished second to Jake Lewis. But my goal is always to finish as high up in the Superbikes as I can. Mm-hmm. So at COTA, a couple weekends ago, to finish in the top 10, that was really my goal. Mm-hmm. The field's stacked this year, so if I can be anywhere inside the top 10, I feel like that's a win for me. But we're really using the Superbike races as testing to go after the Stock 1000 title for sure.
So Stock 1000 is the primary goal for you?
For me and Corey, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and Corey as
well.
well.
And we do have a third rider on the team as well.
Oh, yes, Zach Schumacher.
Zach.
Sorry, Zach. I forgot about. I haven't met Zach yet. I got to meet him, but I know he's a good rider too. He's from Wisconsin area, I believe. Yep. Michael Kiley's dealership up in that area, which is Tytlers Cycle, is kind of the connection there with the 3 of you guys. Yeah, Jace, forgive me for leaving out the third guy. He's important. But I want to talk about the BMW as well. You raced that previous iteration of S1000R. Then you raced the newer iteration, and now you have an M1000RR, which is like the absolute ultimate. Has there been a difference between those bikes, and is this bike the ultimate for you?
I think it will be with time. I think that it's not as similar as I had hoped. There's a lot of different changes in the way that it handles, but the biggest thing is the electronics have changed so much. So for me, it's essentially like starting over again. It's like I know how the power delivers, and I know things like that are familiar, but the way the chassis is and the electronics, it's basically like a completely different motorcycle. But I do think with time and some more testing and things like that, we can develop the bike where it could be a bike that could run well inside the top 10, even in stock trim, because it makes so much power. But it'll just come with more time.
The other thing, if you can explain to us, and I want to show this part of this says Alpha Racing. So before we really knew what was going on with the teams this year and with Tytlers, there was a lot of stuff out there about Alpha Racing, and they weren't really showing bikes in livery, but they were building bikes. What exactly did they do for the program? What was is their connection to Tytlers?
Yeah, so Alpha is basically the number one aftermarket performance brand for BMW motorcycles. So they're based in Germany as well. And I've had a relationship with them and got a lot of their parts over the years for my own bikes. But now between the two programs here, basically having the largest presence in the US that they've been able to have, they have a better relationship with Alpha where they're getting parts at a better rate. And the guys from Alpha actually came out to COTA. So some of the head guys. So They have a program where you can either buy a BMW and then buy some of their parts and build it yourself, or you can buy an outright stock 1000 built straight from Alpha from the factory, so it shows up to you and it's ready to race. And they also offer a Superbike trim as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've mostly gone alone, except until you hooked up with Kyle and the Harley deal. And now you have a teammate, and the teammate's also like one of your biggest rivals for the championship. Is that something different for you?
I mean, are you talking Harleys or with Tytlers?
I'm
because
talking,
I have a teammate who's going to be
I'm talking
on both.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about Corey
Yeah.
and that team now.
No, Corey and I have always had a good relationship, even when we were running separate teams. Corey and I have known each other since the Rookies Cup in 2008. We competed against each other, and I know he took a few years off and then came back really strong last year. But I think for me, I feel like the M is a new bike, but for Corey, it's a completely different motorcycle. So I know that myself and some of the guys that I've brought to the team have been helping their guys understand the bike more. And I think it's only a matter of time before Corey and I are fighting for race wins. But I think no matter what happens, we'll still be pals off the track.
And the size difference doesn't really equate with helping each other too much with setup?
It does. Like,
does?
Our setups are completely different.
Yeah.
Because we have different styles of riding. Just like even Kyle and I on the Harleys, we have completely different setups. But just understanding the different dynamics and trying to be teammates with someone you're friends with, but also your main competitor is something new to me for sure. But no matter who I'm racing against or who my teammate is, I'm still going to try and win. So
when you're on the track, this is obviously goes back to the Harley thing a little bit, but when you're on the track and your brother's out there, I mean, I think the natural thing, you obviously worry about yourself, but somewhere in the back in your mind, you also worry about your brother. Is that the case, or do you turn that off and you don't worry about him at all?
Most of the time we're on the track at the same point, but like, for example, in race 2, when I was behind him and I saw his bike was smoking and then I watched him pull in the pits, I was pretty bummed out for him.
Okay.
But like in practice and qualifying, we try and work together. I mean, at Daytona, I was a little bit quicker than Kyle, but then in other instances, he's been quicker than me, and we've helped each other because the ultimate goal is to get Harley-Davidson on top of the box, or on this side of things, to get Tytlers HVMC on top of the box. So however we can help each other, that's really the goal.
Earlier in this podcast, you mentioned that the Harley now is kind of a little bit more BMW-like in its seating position. So my question to you is, when you've got 4 races, 3 classes this weekend, is it hard? Well, obviously Stock 1000 and Superbike's okay, but going from King of the Baggers to Stock 1000 or Superbike, the two different bikes, everything's so different about them. Is it hard to keep it straight in your head?
Last year, there was only 2 Harley rounds, so I really didn't have to focus too much on making the transitions, but this year was different for me. It's like I got to do a lot of testing on the Harleys, go to Daytona, only ride the Harleys, and then got to switch gears, test the BMWs, go to COTA, only ride the BMWs. So I kind of got my feet wet in both.
Right. And this round, it's all together.
This round is all together for sure.
Right.
And I'm hoping that I've kind of hit the nail on the head with the setup on the Harley, where it's similar to the BMW, where it's not like I'm getting off of one bike that feels like this to another bike that feels like this, right? The ergos should be somewhat similar. It's just, I think, going to be more mentally challenging than physical challenging this weekend because brake markers and shift points and understanding the weight is going to change really. But once I wrap my head around it, I'll just flip a switch and jump from one to the other.
And so kind of track time, seat time is always important. So one does help the other a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in just about every session besides Junior Cup and Twins this weekend. So
and this brings up the fact, the other thing about Travis is he does a lot of performance driving coaching and has done some racing as well. But that's a big part of what you do. You have introduced supercars and things like that, where you live in Nevada, right?
In Vegas,
in
yeah.
Vegas. Driving a car, I mean, you can't lean. You know, it drives me nuts.
You can. You just look stupid.
Yeah. So
I look stupid in all my pictures in cars because when my head's like this, everybody makes fun of me. But.
So you do it. You have the feeling of being on the track, and there is a little bit of that motorcycle rider in you when you're driving a car. Does it help?
Of course. Any time at a racetrack's going to help. You know, you're keeping your mind up to speed, your visuals up to speed. You're still pushing the limits of traction, even though it's completely different. I think it was 2018. I spent like 286 days at the racetrack in 1 year. So I think just being at the track, keeping your mentality into having to stay focused, be smart out there. It's like it just keeps your mind fresh rather than, you know, taking a month off between being at the racetrack, being able to fill in all those days in between at the track, whether it's car or bike. I think is beneficial.
We got to wrap it up, Sean.
We do. Well, I want to say one more thing.
Always.
Just to remind you guys, earlier we had Travis Wyman here. It's the same guy that was here now. There aren't twins. There are 3 Wyman brothers.
Not 4.
But the funny thing about the Wyman brothers, and you've heard this, this cracks me up. They kind of don't look like each other. None of them. Cody doesn't look like Travis. Travis doesn't look like Kyle, or vice versa. And even your mannerisms are a little bit different. I take you to always be a little bit more of the serious one, but we've gotten you to smile and laugh more in this podcast than I ever have. Do people think of you as being kind of serious?
Or grumpy?
I don't know. No. Probably. I don't know. I think the majority of people that meet me at the racetrack, I'm pretty focused, kind of keep to myself, but you know, after the races, we go have a beer or something and hang out. I mean, I let loose a little bit, but I think in years past, I've just invested so much time and energy and money into doing this that I just need to be as focused as possible when I'm here.
So. But when you're coaching driving, you're obviously personable. You got to talk to them, make them feel at ease. What's that dynamic like? Are you have a teacher's mindset? I guess you're trying to impart your wisdom on other people. So how does that work for you? Do you enjoy that?
I do. I enjoy teaching people what I've, learned over the last 30 years of doing this. But I think between myself and my relationship with my students is when I'm talking to them over the radio or coaching them in the car, they always say how my mannerism's so like mellow and chill that keeps them mellow and chill when they're driving, even though their anxiety is high. So, yeah.
I think this has been the chillest I've ever been in a podcast. You're hanging around you, so I just need to hang with you more. That's all. Okay, we'll wrap it up now. Thank you, Travis, for being on. So Travis is involved in 3 classes this weekend, 4 races here at Road Atlanta, and please subscribe to MotoAmerica Live Plus and watch us on TV. We've got our listings on social media as well as on our website, and there's lots of chances to be able to watch Travis race out there and wish him luck. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thanks.